We had learned all the Ramones songs, and then we started deciding to try to write our own songs. And we probably had a few riffs.
Yeah, we had a couple of songs.
Yeah, so we started writing things like Annette's Got the Hits and I Hate My School.
But you would come back from real bass-centric songs that your orchestra is playing, like King of the Road and was it dun 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 dun
Peter Gunn,
Peter
which
Gunn,
I basically ripped off with Annette's Got the Hits.
Yeah, but that's what you're able to take that and turn it backwards and.
Yeah, so I was learning like Mancini.
Yeah,
the Weisburn School District Orchestra, and then and we were fusing. That's the brilliance of Redd Kross. We were fusing the Mancini with the Ramones. And so then Jeff was in Hawthorne High School. Well, we started trying to find any guitar player to come jam with us. One guy was a dude that worked at the Jack in a Box.
He was a little too toasty for us. And then I tried, so like, well, there was this girl, Cindy Kelleher, was like really little. She looked like Jodie Foster she was a very tomboy Jodie Foster girl. She had an electric guitar.
Yeah, she
can kind of play. She was your age.
She was very Jodie Foster, and Alice doesn't live here anymore, which was a big influence for us.
She had an electric guitar and an amplifier. She can play a little bit, but I thought she was cool for an image, and but it didn't work out because she was 11.
She was the first girl I ever kissed.
But the interesting little end of that story is I ran into her like 10 years ago, and she was an adult and
very
shaved
lesbian.
head, everything. She's super cool, but she said, yeah, you wanted me to wear a mini skirt if I was going to join the band.
Yeah, it's a vision. Yeah, he was definitely
I was an
marketing
image
entrepreneur.
person. Everyone that had an electric guitar that I knew of in Hawthorne played with us at least once.
One of them happened to be in Jeff's photography class.
Yeah,
Photoshop. We had Photoshop together, and he had a peachy folder with like a Bags flyer on it. And I came up to him. I go, "Hey, you like punk rock?" And he kind of looked at me. and was like, "Oh, is this guy gonna give me shit?" And I'm like, "So do I." And it's like, "Yeah, well, cool." And then we started talking about, "Yeah, I play guitar. And
after trying out the 11-year-old girl, the 25-year-old kind of toasted punker guy, Greg Hetson was the first viable guitarist of Redd Kross. And I had gone to the Whiskey and taken pictures of X, and I developed in the class. And he's like, "Oh, you like, I'm into the Dickies." So, of course, we became friends. And then he said he had a guitar. So we liked the same kind of music, and so the thing was, yeah, I'm putting a band together with my brother. He's 11 years old. It's really cool. And he's like, what?
I was like, okay, an 11-year-old can play? That's cool.
I said, well, just come over to my house, bring your amp. He brought the amplifier. We were set up in our bedroom. And you played like Annette's Got the Hits or something like that.
Probably.
Or one of the early songs. And
we had some riffs.
And we instantly sounded like a band. We didn't even have a drummer.
Yeah, there was the one kid that had an actual drum kit.
Weisburn School Orchestra with Steve. Steve played bass. I had my drum set. So I was the only kid in town that had the drum set.
But John was kind of the star of the orchestra because he did a drum solo that was like the preamble to Hawaii 5-0. So it was like this free-form jazz, seventh grade drum solo.
You guys have been jamming for years.
I didn't know anything about punk rock before the McDonald's brothers. And so when they called me to be in the band, I'm like, great, yeah, I'll jam with you guys. What are we going to play? Like, well, we've been listening to punk rock stuff. I'm like, I'm like, Devo? I came in it with just, open eyes, but they took me to my very first show. It was the Germs, the Go-Go's, everyone's at the
Fleetwood Germs,
yes,
the Fleetwood Germs, and
Plugs,
the Germs,
Hellcats.
Wow, that was a good show.
That's like the Monterey Pop of early punk.
It was the most amazing show. Then I saw Don Bowles play drums, and then I got it.
Why were you guys the tourists? Where did that name come from?
I think it was like kind of like anybody that was, it was kind of a beach term of people that weren't from the neighborhood. Oh, a bunch of tourists coming and surfing on my turf. So we did kind of take on that. Yeah, well, we're tourists. We're coming in as the outsiders.
Yeah, it was like a big middle finger to the local surf community.
Did any of you guys surf?
I did. Yeah, that's why I think we'd always call people tourists all the time. Get off my beach, tourists.
Well, so how did you feel about being in a band called the Tourists, then, John?
I thought it was great.
You said it didn't feel like you were in a band called the
'cause
Assholes or something?
No, I thought we were mocking the
That
tourists.
term didn't really get too much traction.
To us, the meaning of the band, the name, was very obvious.
But there was no place to play, and there was no way. They would never book us in Hollywood. We didn't, we weren't part of a punk rock scene. We were little kids. And
But we would try because we would literally call. We would know the names of these venues or whatever. Our bands. We would find people's phone numbers in the by calling information.
Yeah, I
Or
called
looking in the yellow
X.
page. Looking in the phone book.
X were very rude because I wanted to put together a show in a Mexican restaurant called Papagayo. They had a stage, and I figured, we can put on a show and maybe we could get with these bands. And I called them. They laughed at me.
We heard that Black Flag lived in the neighborhood, and we saw on the single, the Nervous Breakdown single, it said P.O. Box 1, Lawndale.
Yeah.
And we would go down to the post office in Lawndale and stock it like we were going to see the band. Then we found out where they practiced in Hermosa Beach.
So then I called Greg again, and I said, "Yeah, we have a band. We're like kids,
Jeff would always put me out. He'd always say, "Yeah, our bass player's 11."
Yeah, I was very into like finding any kind of image thing and going for it. And he's like, "Whoa, we have kind of a thing. You come down into our place in Hermosa, and we'll see what's going on." And then we went down to Greg's place, and I remember it was like his office, living space. It was like the first kind of bohemian type person I'd ever met. It was like living in this like kind of filthy, abandoned church, kind of like almost squatting. Because I had this weird memory of mushrooms growing up from the carpet, but I could be wrong. I don't know if that's humanly possible. But it was like that. It's like the first people that I'd ever met that kind of lived their art. We were all like suburban kids, well taken care of, and these guys were like living in filth without showers. It was like really romantic, like, oh wow, like these people are really doing it, and looking through Greg's records, and I remember like, wow, he has a Black Oak, Arkansas album, cool. And so he said, yeah, there's a couple other bands, and they love this group called The Last and the Descendants, who are our age. Yeah. So that's where we met all those people. We met people like Raymond Pettibone, and and then a little bit later, the Minutemen, and Des Cadena. Des was there the first time we ever played, and Keith Morris. And so one day they said, well, come down, we're gonna have a rehearsal party, and they invited like 10
Black Flag would have parties early on in rehearsal spaces, or either their rehearsal space or they would rent a rehearsal space.
But this was really early on, so they just had a room that was much smaller than this one with all their gear to one side, and they invited people over, and they just drank beer, and they said, okay, go ahead, and we played our set. And it was
they handed us their instruments. And
yeah, that was the that was the very first time we ever played in front of anyone. And they're like, great, yeah, it was like being jumped into a gang, actually. Just utter humiliation.
Well,
they were so nice.
The thing I always say is that we auditioned to be their friends.